Said that no one would incur costs for medical issues related to COVID-19, but a migrant worker was sent a bill. A wild day across the sky as southwestern Ontario still under a severe thunderstorm watch in Windsor, Essex, with a high chance of continued rain well into the night, with flood watches issued for the Great Lakes shorelines in our area. Nick Sirkovich has all the details tonight. I'm Chris Hensing. Thanks for watching. After 27 years, a day that many auto workers did not want to see finally arrived.
I am retired.
The third shift at the Windsor Assembly plant is officially over, the change affecting about 1/3 of the employees there. It's a very difficult day for people who work at the plant, some leaving the jobs that they've known for decades, others losing a job that they thought would be their way of life for a long time to come. The CBC's Tamina Aziz standing outside the Windsor Assembly plant right now. Tamina, what have we heard from workers today?
Well, Chris, it's been an emotional day today. This is where thousands of assembly line workers start their shift every day just by these gates. But for some, or for many, it is their last shift, and that's because the third shift has been eliminated, and we know that about 1,500 employees are affected by this. Although we also know that some jobs have been saved because the company is offering buyouts to long-term employees, others will be laid off. And though some are excited about this change, others are not looking forward to it.
That's it, it's over. People were hooting and hollering for like the last hour of the shift, so.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean?
I mean, there was just people like, let's go, like they're cheering at like a hockey game or something, you know? So they're excited.
It's kind of crappy. I mean, a lot of people are losing their jobs, right? And around the city too, other things, it sucks. I don't want to go on afternoons really or days. So I've been 5 years, I've been on midnights, and I'm not looking forward to going back to swing shift, basically.
I'm happy to go from midnights to days, that's for sure. Besides that, our jobs aren't done yet, you know, we still have a chance to work, so I'm fine with it. Like, we haven't heard a word yet of when the third shift is actually getting lost. I think it's a big scheme to go until the contract, which is in September.
A little bit sad that all the job loss. People are worried about their livelihoods and paying their bills, and that's about it.
A lot of perspectives there, Tamina. We know that the union, they've been actively against this since day one. What's the reaction now that the third shift has officially ended?
Yes, Chris, Dave Cassidy, the union president, spoke today, and he spoke with a heavy heart. He says that those who work the third shift are like a tight-knit family. He also adds the fact that it's been a tough day for them. Some have been working there since the shift has been first introduced back in 1993, and it's upsetting to see some of them being let go.
This announcement today. 27 years, this shift has been there. Pretty tough. When we go into bargaining, I'm telling you, we need a new product. FCA has failed us. 5 years ago, they knew this Grand Caravan was going away. We should have had a new product prior to coming into this day. And until we get some type of auto strategy in this country that says we have to have some type of reciprocated trade, that if you want to be able to sell here, then you're going to manufacture here. That's what has to happen.
He says he thanks the seniors who have accepted their buyouts, which in turn is opening up jobs for young employees. We don't know how many exactly are being let go, but he says that those who are being let go, he's going to be determined to bring them back. Chris.
Thanks for this, Tamina. The CBC's Tamina Aziz live tonight. And even though today saw a mass layoff at the Windsor Assembly plant, Windsor's unemployment rate has started to come down. It slipped from 16.7% in May to 15.2% in June. Windsor is now the city with the third highest jobless rate in the country. And overall, it's good news for the Canadian economy. The jobless rate is no longer at a record high. The country added nearly 1 million jobs last month as businesses and workplaces gradually reopened following the COVID-19 shutdowns. CBC senior business reporter Aaron Saltzman has the details.
The number was bigger than just about anyone expected. 953,000 jobs added in June. That dropped the unemployment rate to 12.3%. Hotels and restaurants were among the biggest gainers, and those had been two of the hardest hit segments. Women outpaced men, and that counters the trend that had been in place for this entire pandemic. Ontario and Quebec accounted for more than half of the numbers, but every single province added jobs.
Let's face it, this is an impressive result. It's very encouraging. It shows, just as a lot of these jobs were lost because of the shutdown, they can also be regained as we reopen. I wouldn't go so far to call it a V-shaped recovery, but we're partway along the V.
Canada has now regained nearly half the jobs that it lost in March and April. It's the other half that's the hard part, because with physical distancing still in place, the service sector nowhere near where it's supposed to be, and consumer spending way down, economists say it could be months or even years before the Canadian economy fully recovers. Aaron Saltzman, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario's premier is encouraging people to buy locally in an effort to support the province's pandemic recovery, and he had some strong words about possible U.S. tariffs being placed on Canadian aluminum.
It's going to be made in Ontario, made in BC, made in Quebec. And folks, let's stick together, because economically, we're going to war. Thank you.
Now, Ford says the province will fight any plans to impose tariffs, telling the U.S. president not to go ahead with the plan. Now, Ford spent the day promoting Ontario-made goods after holding his daily press conference at a Woodbridge skylight manufacturer. He toured an Etobicoke textile computing company. The hospital in Leamington is apologizing for billing migrant workers for COVID-related treatment. A spokesperson says it was done in error, a few mistakes. The Ontario government said in March that no one would be charged for COVID-related care with or without insurance.
They went for COVID COVID-related health care, and they were given a bill. It's my understanding that few individual cases, advocacy has addressed a few cases, but for all the other people out there who've been given a bill since the pandemic, what's going to happen to these individuals? So these two deterrents should be a tremendous concern for all of us.
Ramsroof is worried that the mistakes, even if they're fixed, could leave migrant workers hesitant to go to a hospital. I asked Erie Shores Healthcare about this earlier today.
We've had a few bills that were brought to our attention that were sent in error for COVID-related issues. So what we've done here at Erie Shores is immediately reverse those charges and apologized. Now, these particular errors sent out to undocumented migrant workers were because we are diligent about respecting patient confidentiality, and we want to try to limit clinical information that's being accessible to our non-clinical staffs. And in this particular case, Chris, it's our billing clerks. So this process has been imperfect, but we are continuing to refine the process. So we've implemented a system now where we put on all the invoices a note stating that if this invoice is for COVID-related care, immediately notify our billing office to cancel those charges.
When we've heard of the health assessments, the teams going out, and the interactions that you've had within this community, it seems that the hospital and the association has really been trying to break down those barriers. So when something like this happens, is it difficult to rebuild that trust?
I don't think so. I think in this particular case, I mean, obviously, when somebody receives a bill that they weren't expecting, it can be sticker shock. But in this particular case, we are actively encouraging people who have received this bill for it to let us know that you have, and we are going to correct it. You know, our team here at Erie Shores is very realistic about the ability for some people to pay bills. We have a compassionate program in place. We don't send collection agencies to track down unpaid bills. We've tried very hard to break down barriers to accessing care in our community. No means any potential financial issues to stop somebody from receiving care.
Politicians in Windsor, Essex want more provincial help. They're asking for them to appoint a coordinator to deal with the local outbreak of COVID-19 among farm workers. Mayor Drew Dilkins led a video chat meeting with 3 county mayors and 2 hospital CEOs, but as Dale Molnar reports, there was one person who was visibly absent.
And very important, we need the province of Ontario to step up and take a lead in coordinating the on-the-ground response in Windsor, Essex.
Last week, Ontario Health sent down 2 people from the Emergency Response Operations Centre in Toronto to help with the outbreak in Leamington and Kingsville. But Mayor Drew Dilkin says because the different levels of government have different responsibilities when it comes to such things as testing, he wants someone sent here from the province to coordinate.
And so when that testing happens, someone else has to know that that's happening so they can start considering how many hotel rooms they might need, and then someone has to coordinate the acquisition of those hotel rooms or the isolation and recovery places. That's not happening optimally today.
Leamington Mayor Hilda MacDonald says she wants the province to enact a rule that requires workers be tested if they want to work at a farm.
There should be initiatives, or whatever you want to call them, to make the growers acquiesce, if you will, to testing on the farm. I understand their fear, but there needs to be some kind of either a carrot or a stick to say you have to have your farm tested.
Although the mayors of Leamington and Kingsville joined in on the conversation, along with County Warden Gary McNamara, who is also the chair of the Health Unit Board, there was a notable absence. Our medical officer of health wasn't invited.
Which is unfortunate. I think our community can do better. Our community can do a strong leadership in taking a leadership role in taking it, instead of trying to work in silos.
And you have 1 hour, right? You can't get through the business in a diligent amount of time if you bring more people in, and we felt the health unit was represented, so there was certainly no slight or attempt to exclude anybody.
Ahmed says he was saddened and frustrated about being left out, but not angry. Dilkin says the city put in a request to the province on Tuesday to have a coordinator sent, but so far there has been no response. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
Now, during this morning's health unit briefing, Dr. Ahmed says antibody testing would be made available in pediatric departments soon. He says that the conversations are actively happening, and it would help differentiate some of the cases that have been seen in children, like Kawasaki syndrome, and give them a better picture of what's happening. But he has no clear timeline for when this type of testing will start in area hospitals. The CEO of Loblaws, Metro, and Empire took questions from MPs today. Brian Massey spoke with the president of Loblaws about the pay increase for workers. Loblaws president says it was appreciation for the employees and the work that they were doing. That pay bump has been canceled after a few months.
Frankly, is if you're in an office by yourself, working by yourself, do you think your risk is the same as your workers that have to handle groceries and products by hundreds of people going by them every single day, a few feet away, and sometimes interacting with them with different things? Do you think those things are equal?
No, I don't think they're equal, and that's why we spent tens of millions of dollars in order to make our stores safer, in order to provide an essential service.
Today marks 4 weeks since the first public health units in Ontario moved to stage 2 of the province's COVID-19 reopening plan. Still, the government hasn't laid out what will happen in stage 3. Will people be allowed indoor at bars and restaurants? What happens at movie theaters and gyms? Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
Right now, outdoors is the only option in Ontario for eating at a restaurant or drinking at a bar. Owners hope they'll also be able to serve customers indoors when the province moves to the next stage of reopening. And there are clear signs that stage 3 is imminent.
I know everyone's pressuring me, let's open up stage 3. We're going to get there.
The daily number of new cases in Ontario has been coming down steadily since the beginning of June. That continued even after stage 2 reopenings began.
We are looking at the data. It's looking very positive.
Although stage 3 could come any day, the province has yet to say exactly which rules will change.
Anything involving mass gatherings, particularly mass indoor gatherings, should remain off the table. Everything else is probably fair game.
We just want to be cautious, but eventually we have to open up the bars. We have to open up restaurants inside.
If restaurants are approved to serve customers indoors, they'll likely have to keep extra room between groups of diners to reduce the chances of spreading the virus.
There's going to be an inherent risk, but it's a risk that I would say is less than, say, a nightclub.
Crowded bars have contributed to the recent jump in cases in the U.S. In Quebec, bars face new, tighter restrictions effective today.
Key is minimizing the number of people in the establishment, minimizing contact with other people. Bars are a tough one because people go there to interact.
Cinemas have been shut in Ontario since March, British Columbia allowed theirs to open last week.
A movie theater could open, but I guarantee you they're not going to be able to have full capacity. People will be spread out in the seats.
Experts believe Ontario will allow gyms to open in Stage 3, at least partially.
Step classes and spin classes, probably not a good idea. Using weight machines, that can be managed.
Still in question, whether the closures of casinos, convention centers, and amusement parks will end in Stage 3. The government has previously said it would announce reopening moves on Mondays. Today, the Premier was asked if we'll be hearing an announcement about Stage 3 this coming Monday. He said, stay tuned. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
And because public dining still needs to be outdoors in Stage 2, a new space has opened up in downtown Windsor for people to enjoy a meal outside.
This is big for us, just to regroup after, a pretty big battle during COVID. I think we're the last stronghold of a 30 and up crowd downtown, and we're really, bringing that back down here.
It's called the Pitt Street East Parklet and will allow Panache, LaGuardia, and On a Roll, 3 restaurants downtown, to see customers outside. It's the first of its kind in the area, and a second one is expected to open up in the downtown area to serve customers at 3 other spots. And we take a look outside there, you can see the patios were wet and just about everything else is in southwestern Ontario as those thunderstorms roll across the region. Nick Sirkovich will give us an idea of what we're in for tonight and across the weekend when he comes with the forecast next. The Supreme Court of Canada has upheld a federal law that aims to protect the genetic information of Canadians. In a 5-4 decision, the top court ruled that Genetic Non-Discrimination Act is constitutional. The ruling follows a challenge by Quebec, claiming that the law interferes with provincial jurisdiction. Genetic testing is used to identify health risks like cancer or hereditary diseases, but it can also be used to customize treatments. The legislation makes it a crime for third parties, such as employers and insurance companies, to demand genetic data from individuals. Breaking the law could mean a fine of up to $1 million, 5 years in prison, or both. But it provides an exemption for medical, pharmaceutical, and scientific use. The Conservative opposition in Ottawa is calling for a police investigation of the We Charity controversy. They say that ties between the organization, the Prime Minister, members of his family, and members of the Liberal cabinet may go beyond conflict of interest. John Paul Tasker has the details.
A day after CBC News reported that members of the Prime Minister's family have been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars by the We Charity, the opposition Conservatives are demanding a criminal investigation. They want the RCMP to probe the decision to hand that group a lucrative student grants contract worth millions. They say a federal ethics investigation just isn't enough.
We're not looking to bring down the government on this issue. We're looking to get the truth and get accountability for Canadians. That's what they deserve.
The government gave We a sole source contract worth $900 million to administer summer student grants, but the contract has been criticized because of the Prime Minister's close ties to the charity. We initially said they never paid Margaret Trudeau, the Prime Minister's mother, for her work at We, but they've since recanted that statement, saying in fact she received nearly $250,000 in speaking fees. No comment from the Prime Minister today, but the federal government maintains it was public servants that picked We to administer this program.
I just want to underscore that I understand the question that you're raising and the perspective that you're coming from, but make no mistake, the directions that we take are really based on the nonpartisan advice that we get from our public servants. They made a very clear recommendation. We followed that recommendation.
It's not just Trudeau that has family ties. Today we learned that Finance Minister Bill Morneau's daughter works at We. We has since backed away from the grants program. They will no longer administer it. Instead, the federal government will do it itself. John Paul Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
And joining us now for a live look at the weather is Nick Sirkovich. What a busy afternoon for you today, bud. It's just been wild out there.
Oh, no kidding. I mean, I've been watching these thunderstorms roll through. I guess, in a sense, a bit of relief, right? I mean, we don't need flooding, but we do need some rain, and we also need a bit of relief from the heat as well. So we're going to talk about that because we do have some relief on the way. In fact, we're already seeing it in the wake of these thunderstorms. But first, we've got to get through this unsettled weather. So let's take a look at it here. This is what you're basically dealing with throughout the day today. Now, most of that is pushed off east of sort of Chatham-Kent, closer toward the London area. Still some thunderstorm activity, though, back in lower Michigan that's yet to push through. So we're not done with it yet in the Windsor area. Severe thunderstorm watches still in effect down around Windsor, but severe thunderstorm warnings in effect still in areas eastward, and that's where that active weather is in place right now. It's part of this larger system, so that was the bulk of it, but still scattered thunderstorms, potentially heavy at times, to move through the Windsor area as we head through the evening hours tonight, till about midnight or so. Heat warning still in effect at this point, and the reason is the overnight lows. So temperatures themselves have come down to about 25 degrees, this because of the rain cooling. But the overnight low is expected to stay above about 20-21 degrees, and so that's the criteria for heat warnings for the overnight. Humidex values right now sitting at 34, and in terms of the rainfall, I mentioned that we've got that second wave that's going to come through, less than what we had earlier today. Then as we move through tomorrow morning, looks like we may have a few spotty showers, but generally stays dry. I think most of the rain will end by about 1 a.m. this morning down in Windsor. And then into the afternoon, probably see some sunny breaks in there. Any shower and thunderstorm activity confined more to sort of London eastward for tomorrow. Pretty cloudy as we head into Sunday, and the risk for a few spotty showers there on Sunday as well. And Monday, the potential for some unsettled weather, but generally just some showers there. There's a look at the potential rainfall totals, but again, when we're dealing with convective weather, you know, it's really location dependent because thunderstorms aren't that big. So don't put too much stock in those numbers, but generally 25 plus millimeters. There's a look at the forecast in the long range. Sunday, Monday, bit of relief there. But then as we head toward the end of next week, humidity climbs back up to 40 again.
I tell you, but it's nice to see that dip, though. That dip
it'll be
good
good
enough.
relief there.
Yeah. Thanks for this, Nick. Have a good weekend, eh?
You too.
And after years of lobbying, the Cliffs of Fundy in Nova Scotia have been designated a UNESCO Global Geopark. We'll show you the pictures next. Turkey has turned the historic Hagia Sophia landmark back into a mosque. The country's president made the announcement after the top court annulled the site's museum status. In response, UNESCO said it will review the building's status as a World Heritage Site. Hundreds of people gathered outside the 6th century building in Istanbul to celebrate the decision. Greece's cultural ministry called it an open provocation to the civilized world. Hagia Sophia was built as a cathedral but was turned into a mosque by the Ottoman Empire nearly 600 years ago. The founder of modern Turkey made it a museum in 1934. The first prayer in the mosque is set to take place on July 24th. Meanwhile, here in Canada, the Cliffs of Fundy in Nova Scotia have been designated an UNESCO Global Geopark. That announcement was made after years of lobbying. UNESCO views global geoparks as places that offer visitors a glimpse of exceptional geological heritage. The Cliffs of Fundy Geopark stretches across 160 kilometers of rugged coastline between Truro and Eatonville, and the site is known for having the world's highest tides, Canada's oldest dinosaur fossils, and a stunning landscape, as you can see, home to more than 40 unique geological and cultural sites. It's 6:29 p.m. and that's it for CBC Windsor News. Before we leave, a final look at the final third shift at the Windsor Assembly plant. Hundreds of people leaving that section of the plant for the last time. And if you want any more information on these stories, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor.